Дорогие друзья,
Dear friends, at your request, we are launching a new video series in which I will regularly answer your questions.
на ваши вопросы.
Of course, we will constantly keep you up to date with the latest news on the official website of the engineering company Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated. And on social media. However, I understand that there are questions that you would like to get answers to from me personally.
Поэтому я и моя команда
Therefore, my team and I will try to record and publish such videos on a regular basis. Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated has entered the stage of commercialization of USD technology. I hold a significant number of meetings with potential customers, develop design solutions and improve USD technology, and all this in different countries and even on different continents.
благодаря вашей поддержке
Thanks to your support, I have formed a scientific engineering school in Minsk, which has about 1,000 professionals. But all the main technical and technological solutions are still being developed by me personally. In the previous video message about the results of the year 2023, I, together with Nadezhda Kosareva, the General Director of Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated,
постарались
tried to tell you as much as possible about our key accomplishments. Among them is the launch of the first targeted project for commercial transportation in the Republic of Belarus and the completion of the construction of the USD demonstration and certification complex with a length of more than 2 kilometers in the United Arab Emirates, having the new flagship of the model range of suspended uPods, the 25-seat U-Bus Kurat, as its key component.
таким образом с вашей помощью
Thus, with your help, we have reached the final stage, from ideas and projects to the practical implementation of fundamentally new transport and infrastructure complexes, cargo, urban and high-speed intercity ones. And this path was covered by us in a very short time. This is a phenomenal result. The transport specialists understand perfectly well what I'm talking about. I emphasize, together with you, we are creating not just a new type of electric vehicles, but a new transport and infrastructure industry based on USD technologies, where an unmanned electric vehicle on steel wheels is only a small and not the most important component of cargo and passenger complexes. By combining efficient and environmentally friendly engineering solutions, we strive to create the world's best transport and logistics system that ensures fast and convenient movement of goods and passengers. Now to the first question.
какие компании
Which companies were created to implement USD technology and who is their owner? In order to implement USD technology and protect the interests of investors, receive dividends from the practical implementation of string technologies in targeted projects implemented on all continents and in all countries of the world, the UST Group of Companies was created within the Unitsky Group of Companies. I will draw a diagram later.
эта система
It is a system of research, engineering, design, manufacturing, holding and marketing organizations. Their activities are related to the development, design, testing and operation of USD transport and infrastructure complexes in overpass design.
организации
The organizations that are included in the UST Group of Companies are united not as a legal entity, but in terms of the goals and objectives for which they were created and which are defined in their charters.
таким образом
Thus, the UST Group of Companies includes only those companies that were founded by investors, who invested their money specifically in string technologies. The engineering center among them is Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated, followed by our production complex in Belarus, SV plant, as well as USky Transport and uScavery in the United Arab Emirates and several marketing offices in other countries. Accordingly, investors are the owners of this group of companies. I would also like to note that I'm no less interested in the early entry of UST technology into the market and the implementation of targeted projects than other owners and investors. Few people know, perhaps because I've not often talked about it, that I, Anatoli Unitsky, is the largest investor in the UST Group of Companies and transferred to it free of charge, that is without paying myself remuneration, my personal intellectual property related to UST technology created over the previous 40 years of scientific, inventive and business activities and estimated by independent experts at $400 billion. At the time of the formation of the UST Group of Companies, I wasn't an anonymous engineer without funds, but had been active in commercial, scientific and technical activities for 3 decades, received grants including 2 United Nations grants and payments for dozens of implemented inventions, and also had successful businesses. For example, I earned the first $3 million on the implementation of my innovations in the national economy of the USSR back in 1989 at the Center for Scientific and Technical Creativity of the Youth Star World, created by me in the city of Gomel. In the 2013 and 2014 years, with my personal funds, I paid for the international assessment of the intellectual property of UST technology, created the UST Group of Companies in several jurisdictions with the opening of accounts and offices in different countries, hired management and paid their salaries while financing the companies themselves from my personal accounts. In total, since 2014, I have invested more than $10 million of personal funds in UST technology. I would like to emphasize that you shouldn't confuse the UST Group of Companies and the Unitsky Group of Companies. I repeat, the UST Group of Companies, whose activities are aimed exclusively at the implementation and commercialization of UST technology, is part of the Unitsky Group of Companies. But my interested participation in the development of the project as one of the leaders, the largest investor, and at the same time the author of UST technology is not the only thing I devote my time to. However, this is the main thing that I am associated with in the public space. As a result, there is a confusion of concepts. I dived into business in the distant 1988 Perestroika year, from the position of head of the Patent and Licensing Service of the Academic Institute of Mechanics of Metal Polymer Systems. By that time, more than 20 of my inventions had already been introduced into the national economy of the USSR, with a total economic effect of more than 100 million Soviet rubles, which were then stronger than the dollar. The inventor was then entitled to a reward of up to 2% of the economic effect. In addition, since then, I have created various business structures in more than 10 jurisdictions: commercial, industrial, research, construction, agricultural, ranging from non-rocket space exploration to organic farming. In total, there are more than 100 companies. Most of them ceased to exist and were closed by me a long time ago, for one reason or another. But some of them have remained and are still functioning and bringing me profit, since I am their founder. These companies also belong to the Unitsky Group of Companies. Most of them were created by me, engineer, scientist and businessman Anatoli Unitsky personally. without attracting third-party investments. Therefore, investors who invested in USD technology are not involved in such business activities of mine. Investors are the owners of only a part of the Unitsky Group of Companies, namely the UST Group of Companies.
В разных местах, в разных городах, еще в советское время.
Back in Soviet times, I was creating companies in different places and cities.
В общей сложности, за все эти годы, я, наверное, уже потом...
Then the Soviet Union collapsed, and work there began even more actively. I even created a factory for the production of ceramics and ceramic tableware. I created the first private currency exchange store in the city of Gomel in the early 90s of the last century. I even created the Institute of Social Inventions in Moscow and a group of companies for the implementation of string transport. For example, this is the Unitsky Research and Production Complex in the year 2000 in Moscow, and a group of companies implementing technology in Azura in the Moscow region. There was a construction company, as well as the scientific design and testing ones. In total, over these decades, I have created more than 100 companies, and everywhere I was the sole founder. All of this is the Unitsky Group of Companies, because all of it was created for my ideas and technologies. But then, when I realized I cannot finance string technologies on my own, the decision was made. And that's when I turned to people, saying that there is the technology. And that with their help, with the help of investors, we will create the largest business in the history of humankind. What Boeing, Henry Ford, Stevenson, Sikorsky did together. And then I received support from investors, and we have already started, together with investors, to create companies in different countries, in different locations, specifically for the development of string technologies. And this is how the UST Group of Companies was created, inside the Unitsky Group of Companies. So here is the UST Group of Companies, and here the Unitsky Group of Companies. In this diagram, it is obvious that these are different things, and which company is which. Here is the one created by Unitsky, and its area of activity doesn't matter. And by the way, it was created long time ago, before the UST Group of Companies existed. And here is a group of companies which primarily includes investors, and Unitsky too, as an investor. In addition to all that has been said, it should also be recalled that there are organizations that are related neither to the Unitsky Group of Companies nor the UST Group of Companies. They are crowd investing platforms which act as a qualified intermediary between investors and holding companies. In other words, The purpose of their activity is to provide investors with services for the acquisition of rights to shares in USD technology through a convertible loan agreement. Thus, these organizations allow those who wish to purchase shares in the UST Group of Companies, which these platforms themselves are not part of. These platforms, such as, for example, Sky World Community, have their own leadership, their own organizational structure, which includes individual companies with the appropriate owners and staff. I have no direct relation to their activities. I cannot influence or control them. I can only terminate cooperation with them in case of significant violations or abuses, for example, as it was in the case of the SVIG Foundation, which we parted with more than 3 years ago. These platforms are bound by contractual obligations both with investors and with organizations belonging to the UST Group of Companies as intermediaries, agents, business angels, and the like. The difference between them and the UST Group of Companies lies in the purpose of their activities, as well as in who their owners are. The group of companies creates and commercializes technology. The platforms attract investments. The group of companies is owned by investors. The platforms are supervised by specially created legal entities that do not belong to investors, but only provide them with relevant services. Just like an exchange, for example, it allows you to purchase shares of various companies without being part of these companies itself. What about the factory in Belarus? Is the production of uBuses in small batches debugged there? When is the launch of mass production planned? What is missing in production for a serial launch? First of all, I would like to remind you that we are not just creating some kind of machines, but the most complicated transport and infrastructure complexes. The UST complex includes a transport string rail overpass, second level, above-ground infrastructure, switches, stations, train stations, depots, and other structures, an automated control system, and finally, rolling stock. Dozens of models of mounted and suspended passenger and cargo unmanned electric vehicles on steel wheels, collectively called uPods. Cargo and passenger uPods, including models of the U-Bus type, are just a small part of any UST transport and infrastructure complex. Therefore, they can be purchased by the customer only as part of a complex for a specific address project. Nobody needs the U-Bus by itself. If small-scale production of U-Buses starts now, it will be work for a warehouse, which means losses for the UST Group of Companies, which is absolutely unacceptable from any point of view, primarily from the economic point of view. Our own production is currently necessarily primarily for the practical implementation and verification of our design solutions in the flesh, and it performs this function perfectly. The existing plant in Belarus, SV plant, is equipped with everything necessary, including the most modern machine park, for small-scale production of uPods in the amount of up to 100 units per year. It covers all the current needs of the UST Group of Companies, including Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated, for prototypes of cargo, passenger and high-speed uPods. At the same time, the machine park of the plant is currently not idle and works for third-party orders from Belarusian, Russian, Kazakh, Chinese and other customers, which ensures its economic stability and does not require separate financing, that is sourcing, from its owners, investors in UST technology. In fact, the need for the uPods production will arise only when the supply of rolling stock to targeted projects begins. If the demand for string rail rolling stock increases, for example, to hundreds and thousands of units per year, we will be able to scale our production and build a factory for the production of uPods in the country, where a large targeted project will be implemented, where it will be profitable for us, and not for the additional money of our investors, but at the expense of future customers. Single and small-scale delivery of rolling stock can also be carried out from Belarus, both currently and in the future, in the amount of up to 100 uPods per year. Dear friends, thank you for your attention. I will continue to answer the remaining questions in my next video messages. I will try to go on the air more often, despite my busy schedule. I think that such a format of our communication will become a good tradition and a kind of bridge between the developers of UST technology and its partners. Without your support, it would have been extremely difficult for us to achieve all the large-scale results that we have already achieved. Together, we will be able to implement all our projects.